there, and welcome to Gina Gardiner and Friends. As always, I have a great guest, and today is no exception. My friend Yvonne Elsilver has come to talk to us today, and we're going to be looking at the whole issue of resilience and confidence, and looking for creative possibilities rather than looking at what you can't do and you can't manage. So Yvonne, a huge welcome. Would you like to share your story, how you've come to be someone who works in this field?
Absolutely. I grew up in London, England, as you can tell from my accent, and growing up with a father with PTSD. He came back from World War II. He got a bullet in Dunkirk, and he showed up as just being a very angry man and very impatient because he didn't get treated like thousands, hundreds of thousands of men returning from the war. And he literally drained the dignity right out of my mum. He was criticizing her all the time. He was giving her very, very meager housekeeping money. He took the car keys away after she taught him how to drive and really took away her power. So this was what I observed growing up. And I swore I was never going to be like that. And it developed into this resilient, adventurous, persistent, darn well not going to be like that streak, which created a very resilient character, which I think actually helped me later on in life when I became a mom as well. And my business is as a coach, executive coach. So I love looking at how people can really step into their maximum potential. And I do that with everybody that I meet. I just cannot help it. It's one of those things I cannot not do. If I can see someone is struggling with something or floundering, I have to extend a hand to help.
That's wonderful. And there are so many people, aren't there, who are struggling, finding life difficult. And life tends to throw all sorts of curveballs at you. And I know you have a son. In England, we talk about children who have special needs. I like to refer to them as special differences, things that make them unique. Do you want to talk to us about your son?
Absolutely. I am incredibly proud, Gina, of my son. And, you know, as I shared when you and I first connected briefly, it's really a fascinating story where as parents, you know, we role model what we want our children to do in terms of behavior. You know, they very often don't listen to what we tell them, but they'll follow us and do what we show them to do. And in his case, he's now 27. His name is Alex, and he was born with, you know, some pieces missing out of his brain, developmentally delayed. And as he grew, he had a very keen interest in anything creative, anything to do with cars in particular, and then that later turned into painting. So he came running into me one day, Gina, Mom, I need a credit card. And of course, I chuckled, right?
There are plenty of teenagers who run into their parents and say, Mom, I need a credit card.
Exactly. But in his case, I was thinking, oh, great, a sign of financial independence, because his social age is more like about 7. So what do you need it for, honey? He said, I want to buy a kid a smile. What? So I didn't understand. He pulled me into the living room and he'd been watching an Operation Smile telethon where they go the whole weekend and they're raising money for Operation Smile, which is the group that fixes the cleft palate surgery for kids in poor countries. They send teams of doctors over there. And it's just a magical transformation that takes a child who's disfigured and really very often hidden away or shunned and not able to go to school, to being able to be accepted in society and really have a chance at life. So he said, I want to buy a kid a smile. And they had said, you need $250 or put it on your credit card. So that's what he wanted the credit card for. So that was, you know, a heartwarming enough story as it was. But then people in the banking industry do not know what to do with an application from a special needs kid who does not have a job and is on government funding. They don't know how to process that. So it went in the B pile and never surfaced 3 times. Eventually he gets tired of waiting and he says, Mom, I'm going to sell my paintings and I'm going to raise money that way. And I thought, well, how brilliant is that? So I got him onto Global News. We did an article through several different media outlets, got him on TV. We got him on a Dragon's Den first round pitch, which is kind of like Shark Tank. I don't know if you have that in the
We
UK. I
have
can't remember
Dragon's
now.
Den in the
Yeah.
UK, yes.
So we didn't get funding through them because it's not really a business. It's more of a social enterprise mission. But he did get enough traction, even in the first couple of years, to sell enough paintings and prints to raise money to have 5 children, 5, that have now had their faces transformed. And it really, to me, showcased, what's possible, because here's a special needs kid who's got a social age of about 7. And if he can impact 5 kids and have them embrace back into society again by selling paintings and getting creative, what's possible for regular kids who have no physical limitations?
What's interesting to me at a whole number of levels is that if you look at children who have a cleft palate, they often have a split top lip.
Yes.
So not only has your son impacted on the lives of those children and given them a future within society, but the impact on their families, because their families often see it as a mark of dishonor or something to be fearful of. And so they feel in some way that they've done something wrong. And so the impact is far greater than the 5 people who've actually had their cleft palate and their split lip repaired. And I think there's a real lesson for us all when you look at what Alex has chosen to do, because he's recognized that he can find a way. And there's so much in there. Firstly, he wanted to help. Secondly, when he tried the first avenue, it didn't work. And so he looked for an alternative and found one where he was actually in control of providing the alternative, which I think, for all of us, whatever age you are, whatever ability you have, that's a huge lesson in life, isn't it?
It is. And even as a kid, Gina, he was just adorable. He had this cute energy. We would walk into a store and store clerks would literally give him things. He'd put his hand out and say, "Can I have this?" And I may say yes, I may say no. But we get to the checkout and the store clerk would say, "Oh, he's so cute. Let me just give this to him." And in the end, I had to say, stop giving him things, because then he's going to think that life is just a free ride and you don't have to do anything, right? There's not a good lesson here. So he did develop this very persistent skill, and his social skills might have been a little bit less than his physical age, but his negotiating skills were like 100-year-old. He would come back and he'd say, "Well, Mom, how about this? Or we could try this, or could we do it this way?" And eventually he'd come up with something that I think, why am I saying no to this? That makes perfect sense, and it's a great solution. So I want to reward that creativity and yet balance it with, again, if I say no and it's something that's safety issue, it's no. There's no debate, no discussion, no ifs or buts. But if it's something that I don't have to take a hard stand on, why not? Let him get creative and negotiate, and then he's won. And he used those talents in lots of ways in life.
Yvonne, for me, as someone who's learned to walk twice as an adult and being completely wheelchair bound at times, the importance of focusing on what I could do rather than all of the things that I couldn't do is, I think, been a deal breaker for me. It's really made the difference. It enabled me to run my school from my wheelchair. And it's a principle that I use every day of my life to look at. If I can't find one way around things, how can I find my way around another? Now, I know you do a lot of work with confidence and resilience with professional women who are struggling to start with. What's your view about the way we focus on things and how we can make the most of that?
Well, I learned fairly early on in my career. I mean, I was in sales initially. My first job was actually in a retail store at age 12. By 13, I was the store manager. So, so I got to Canada using sales skills, and then stepped into less traveling into an office administration role, which included a lot of recruitment, and ended up with me becoming the HR manager. And through that, it was about looking at, what's possible, because the hiring manager always had this, extensive list of all the must-haves, and yet I would have to come back and say, well, this person's got this and this and this, but they don't have this and this and this. You have to, be flexible, because this is a bit of a technology boom. This was back in '85. So I was always looking at what is the creative solution. And then when I stepped into doing coaching about 12 years ago, formally, with executive coach certification, I realized that I actually had a real gift for helping others to see what the possibilities are. It's almost like a superpower, where as a kid, you might have these join the dots books. So my clients come to me with all the dots scattered all over the page, but there's no numbers to say join from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to
Yes.
4. And that's what I help them do, is see how to join the dots so it makes a clear picture that's able to be monetized. So my process is to help them visualize what they want in their business, connect it to their heart, their soul, their mind, their skills, their passions, their interests. So they're really embedded and infused in the business. And then look at not only how do we visualize, but how do we monetize it? And then how do we optimize it? So we've got to be clear in the marketplace to attract attention with all the noise right now. Then we all have to clearly have a model that works, so you're not going to burn yourself out, a mix of product and service. And then lastly, let's optimize and use technology and affiliates and all the other things that we can do to add to maybe your team so that you can have more beach time. And it is about being creative and resilient. And that's, I think, the connection back to, having a special needs son taught me a lot of resilience, a lot of advocating for his needs, but also looking at possibilities and options. That, I think, is a natural gift that I can bring to my clients, which is obviously highly valued because they get stuck and they can't see the options. And I can ask those questions. A favorite is, what's working really well? And how could it be even better? So it's leveraging on David Cooperrider's appreciative inquiry concepts, where there's 4 questions, but I just pick out 2. What's working well? How could it be better? And if you start there, it's amazing what possibilities open up.
Isn't it interesting how often people will focus on all of the things that aren't going well and lose complete sight of those things that are? It's one of the reasons why I think that collecting gratitudes is such a powerful way to recalibrate the brain, because even on the darkest day, there are lots of things to be grateful for. And I know those who've listened to me before will know that a great cup of tea, I'm very English, or decent plumbing, the natural world. A friend's just brought her new puppy here, and such a great time watching this little furry animal get to grips with being in a new place. I have to say, my cat is none too impressed. He's not grateful for the experience. But ultimately, the window through which you see the world will be your reality. And if you see all of the things you can't do, that's your reality. If you look for the things that you can do, then that too becomes your reality.
It does. And in Alex's case, it really is about creativity and problem solving to let him adapt to what he can do. And I've shared his story a few different times. It was on the League of Giants TV as well, and they were actually taking their book down to the States to train some special needs teachers. And he asked me if he could get Alex's global news clip and shared it with the teachers, so that ripple effect, when they saw what was possible. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop, apparently. He told me afterwards. It was just so impactful. What's possible? And in Alex's case, he's having a bit of a medical challenge right now. So I would love eventually for him to be out in schools with kids ages maybe 6 to 12, really bringing that message to light of, if I can do this, if I can impact this many lives, what can you do? And share that message. I know that words are powerful. I wrote a book on, words, women, and wisdom, the modern art of confident conversations, which was dedicated to my mum, who I call my first unmentor, because she she showed me what not to do. And
Okay.
she let my dad drain the dignity right out of her with his powerful, mean words. And so I wrote that book, and I bring to life things that you've mentioned in there too, about the power of gratitude, about appreciative inquiry. And there's one other concept just to share quickly with the listeners, which is Michael Lozier's clarity through contrast. It's in his Law of Attraction book. So when you are completely stuck, if you can't think about, well, I don't know what I want, I can't visualize it, I'm so stuck right now, then you can also say, well, what's not working? And then make a list of all the things that are not working around this particular topic you're trying to solve. And then just flip it and say, well, what's the opposite of that? So if you're in a job where you've got your boss breathing down your neck all the time, you don't like to be micromanaged, well, what do you want instead? What's the opposite of that? I want to have an independent, autonomous work environment. I want to be seen as an expert. Well, great. How do you do that? So it can get you unstuck. It's called clarity through contrast. And I use that a lot too with my clients.
I think it's really very powerful as an approach. You know, one of the things that strikes me is how many people don't allow themselves, they fail to give themselves permission to shine, that they stay playing small. And part of that, I think, is conditioning, or that they're listening to other people telling them that they can't. Often parents or teachers, because they don't want them to be hurt. But actually, if you listen to those words, it can keep you stuck. And part of this, I would say, is for people to ask themselves, whose permission am I seeking? Is it mine, or is it my parents that I'm listening to, even though I may be in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? Or is it society? I'm asking permission to be me. And I was talking to a young man in his 30s yesterday, a new client, who feels completely backed into a corner. Yet when you look at his life, very successful, he's been given 9 promotions, but promotions in something that he doesn't really want to do. But he doesn't want to upset anybody. He doesn't want to be seen to be failing. And so the higher up the promotional tree has gone, the more unhappy he's been and the more cornered he feels by that.
Right.
And I just asked the question, whose permission do you need in order to be true to what you want to do?
Yeah.
And, you know, there was one of those very poignant silences while he thought about it. And for him, it was his dad's words that he could hear, was saying, you know, you've got to work, you've got to be a company man, you've got to work your way up the ladder, even if it's something that he didn't want to do.
Yeah. Those early things, I mean, obviously we're just forming as kids, right? They stick. You know, my dad told me at age 11, you know, and this is a series of things that had gone, you know, where I'd been criticized and punished and criticized and punished, that I would never, ever be successful in life because I failed my 11 plus by 2 marks. And that comment, I'm just about to go into high school, I pretty much lost my voice too, because I lost my confidence.
Yes.
And I carried that, you know, I put up this emotional shield and I carried that until I was 45, Gina. And then finally realized I was keeping myself small behind the shield, and it was time to come out. And that's when I started looking at, okay, what am I going to do really? Like, what's important? And deciding that I was going to write my book. And one of the things in there is don't ask for permission all the time, because you're giving your power to someone else. Instead, it's better to just do it. Don't ask, just do it, and then apologize if necessary afterwards.
I
Just
think
step
that's
into it,
really
especially for women.
Yeah. I just need to explain for those people who are either not of the age or not from the UK that 11 plus, it still happens in a very small number of cases, but it used to be the exam at 11, which would decide whether you'd go to grammar school or to technical school or secondary school. These days, a very small number of children still go to grammar schools, but not every area has a grammar school. And it's an IQ test that children take around the age of 10 or 11 to determine the score. Yvonne, how can people get hold of you?
So the best place is to connect with me through LinkedIn, actually. Yvonne Elsilver is on my file there. You can also connect with me through my website, which is yvonnesilver.com, and also find me on Facebook, Twitter, but LinkedIn is my preferred approach.
Brilliant. And the other thing really is to say, if you could give the name of your book again and where people can find your book.
Yeah, it is available through Amazon, and it's called Words, Women, and Wisdom, The Modern Art of Confident Conversations. And it's available through Amazon as an ebook or a hard copy format. And it's also on All Sound, AWESOUND, as an audiobook now as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, we belong to B1G1, Buy One, Give One, which means that it's an organisation designed for businesses. And every time we have a guest, we invite the guest to choose one of the projects. And this month's projects are clean water, food for the hungry, education, or there's a special project for children in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Which of the 4 projects would you like us to donate to on your behalf?
I think that education is still my focus.
Okay.
I'm a big supporter of the Sustainable Development Goals. I actually do Buy One, Give One. I didn't know there was a group doing that formally, but I do that with my books anyway. For every physical copy purchased, I donate one to a women's shelter foundation or not-for-profit as well. And I do that in stacks of 10 generally. So
wonderful. Well, B1G1 is a great organisation. If you put it into the internet, it is literally a capital B, the figure 1, capital G, the figure 1. And I love them because they create a way of people giving. You know that the projects are vetted, and they have a separate sister charity that actually earns the money to pay for the charity. So all of your money goes to the project. So if you're listening, do go and have a look. It's designed specifically for businesses, and the impacts are broken down so that it doesn't have to cost a lot for you to make a difference. And it's great marketing. So for example, one coffee shop that I know, coffee chain, for every cup of coffee, they give a day's free clean water. And it costs very little per cup of coffee, but cumulatively, they've done enormous work in the developing world, giving people free water. Now, we've just got a very few minutes. So I just wondered if you had some pearls of wisdom around resilience and confidence that you could share with the listeners.
Mm-hmm. Well, resilience, I think, is one of those things that you develop by trying things that you're not sure that you can do, or sometimes it's a big goal that you never dreamed possible. I went hiking as part of one course with T. Harv Eker, and we had to climb a mountain, and we had a specific time limit for it. And never in a million years did I think I was fit enough to get up to the top of this mountain, but I did. I mean, I stopped at level 1, level 2. My legs were numb. By the time I got to the top, and we'd helped someone with crutches on our team to get to the top as well, it was an exhilarating feeling, and it really made me question what was possible that I hadn't thought I could do before. And so you develop resilience through trying stuff and being successful at it and being persistent at it. And then confidence, I believe, is when you're in total alignment. You know what you're here to do on the planet, and you're just embodying it and just doing it. You're not trying to make it, fake it, or any of those things. You are in true embodiment of the thing that you're setting out to do in life and the impact you want to make. And that's where confidence really shines. It shines from the inside out.
I think confidence is one of those things that so many people feel that everybody else is more confident than them, and that, you know, that people can see how shy or how diffident they are. And I think the reality is that so often you need to fake it till you make it, in the sense of new activities and meeting new people. But I absolutely accept that when you are living your true purpose, out of that comes an inner radiance and confidence that is very different. But many people don't have an identified purpose. For me, I think it's important that they live with purpose, whatever they're doing, whether it's the washing up or going for a walk, that they actually are in the moment and are fully embracing that activity. Just interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, being purposeful. So as you said, whatever it is that you choose to put your energy on, be fully embracing the experience, loving what you're doing and staying aware. I mean, I use a ritual every morning, a sacred ritual for grounding myself before I step out into the rest of the world. So my first half hour of the day is about meditation, it's about holosync recordings, visualization, gratitudes. It's all of the things that set me up for the day to
Yeah.
be showing up purposefully. And then also the other part of your question, it was about being purposeful and
But there are times when you think that everybody else looks confident, but you
mm,
don't feel
right.
confident.
Yeah.
So, for example, going in to meet new people,
Hmm.
and I say to others, well, rather than focusing on how you feel, go and make the other people feel confident
Yes.
by asking them, hello, nice to meet you. So where are you from? Or tell me about you. Most people are given the prompt are happy to talk about themselves. And that
Yeah.
gives you some breathing space, doesn't it, to actually get yourself settled. So when they ask you, you're not feeling so worried.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there's an awareness for us as coaches that the person who's asking the questions is the one who's actually in control of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, you can show your brilliance not by saying, "Oh, look at me, I'm this and I'm that," and all that in a bag of hammers. But you can demonstrate that expertise by the question you ask. I was reading a really interesting article in Fortune magazine the other day. I wondered if you'd seen it. It's about blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, you've just showed who you are and what your interests are and what level that you're operating at if you're buying and reading Fortune magazine. You don't have to talk about anything else. You've asked the question and engaged them by a powerful question.
Great advice, and I'm afraid we've run out of time. So thank you
Hmm.
so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. And I would say to you, if you're listening, please do tune in to the next show. That's Gina Gardiner and Friends.